The billionaire gangster survived and forced the nurse who saved him into a fake marriage. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to the main character. Red and blue lights cut through the storm as an ambulance skids to a stop outside the emergency entrance. The doors fly open, and orderlies rush a gurney inside. The man on it is tall, broad, and bleeding badly. His suit is torn. His hands are cuffed, then quickly uncuffed by someone who knows better than to slow this down. Everyone in the room understands who he is without saying his name. He is a billionaire gangster. Powerful. Ruthless. A man whispered about never confronted, and tonight he is dying. The nurse steps forward before anyone can hesitate. She is not impressed. She is not afraid. She is focused. Her hair is tied back tight, her sleeves rolled up, her eyes locked on the monitor as it screams warnings no one else wants to hear. Blood pressure dropping, pulse irregular, oxygen falling fast. Clear the room, she says, voice steady. I need space. Someone starts to protest. Someone always does. She does not look up. Now, they move. On her table, he is not a king. He is not a criminal. He is not a legend. He is a patient whose heart is failing by the second. She presses hard counts out loud and calls for medication with the calm authority of someone who has done this too many times to panic. The man's eyes flutter open for a moment. Just a moment. Long enough to see her face hovering over him, streaked with rain and sweat, jaw set, hands unshaking. Long enough to hear her voice cut through the chaos. Stay with me, she says. Do not you dare leave. Something changes in him then. Not his condition, his focus. In that sliver of time between life and death, he sees a woman who does not flinch at his reputation, who does not beg for mercy, who does not look away. She is saving him because it is her job. Because it is right, because she does not choose who deserves to live. His heart stops. The room freezes. She does not. Start compressions, she orders. Again. Minutes stretch like hours. Rain pounds the windows. The monitor screams, and then finally steadies. A heartbeat returns. Slow, weak, real. He survives. Hours later, the hospital settles into its uneasy calm. The nurse washes her hands at the sink, scrubbing away blood she does not own. She exhales, shoulders finally dropping. Another life pulled back from the edge. Another night she will not forget. She does not know that somewhere down the hall, guarded by men who never sleep, the man she saved is awake. He stares at the ceiling of the private intensive care suite, replaying a single image again and again. Her eyes, her voice. The way she spoke to him like he mattered only because he was human. For the first time in his life, someone saw him without fear. And he wants her. Not as a trophy, not as a purchase. He wants her because she stood between him and death and did not ask who he was before deciding he deserved to live. Outside the room, his world waits for orders. Inside, a decision has already been made. The nurse walks back onto the floor, unaware that saving his life has just changed her own forever. The morning after the surgery arrives quietly, as if the hospital itself is holding its breath. The nurse finishes her shift just after sunrise. Her feet ache, her back is stiff, and there is still dried blood on the edge of her shoes. She stands at her locker, longer than usual, staring at her reflection in the dull metal door. Another life saved, another line crossed between exhaustion and purpose. She tells herself it was just work. That is what she always tells herself. She changes into her clothes, ties her hair back again out of habit, and walks past the intensive care unit without slowing down. She does not look toward the private suite at the end of the hall. She does not ask his name. She does not want to know it. Knowing names makes things heavier. Outside, the rain has stopped, leaving the city slick and gray. She pulls her jacket tighter and heads for the bus stop, already thinking about sleep, about reheating leftovers, about the quiet comfort of a normal life. In a few hours, she will meet her boyfriend to finalize details for their engagement dinner. A small restaurant, simple rings, a future that feels safe, if not exciting. Inside the hospital, the man she saved is wide awake. Doctors come and go, careful with their words, respectful in a way they are not with ordinary patients. They talk about recovery time, about internal bleeding, about how close it was. He listens without interrupting, his dark eyes distant. When they finally leave, he turns his head slightly. "Her," he says. His voice is hoarse but steady. "The nurse from last night." The head of security steps forward immediately. "We can get her file." "No," the man replies. "I do not want a file. I want to know who she is." By afternoon, he knows everything that matters. Her name, her schedule, how long she has worked here. The fact that she refuses overtime bonuses and donates part of her paycheck to a local clinic that treats people who cannot pay. The fact that she is engaged to a man who works in finance and talks a great deal about upward mobility. He laughs quietly at that. 2 days later, she returns for her next shift. The hospital feels different the moment she steps inside. There is a subtle tension in the air, a tightening of shoulders, a quickening of footsteps. Security is heavier. Voices drop when she walks past. She ignores it. Hospitals are full of strange energy. She has learned to tune it out. She is checking charts at the nurse's station when a shadow falls across the counter. "I would like to thank you." She looks up. He is sitting in a wheelchair, one hand resting casually on the armrest, the other wrapped in white bandage. He is pale but composed, controlled. His presence fills the space without effort. She recognizes him instantly, not from fear but from memory. The weight of his body on the gurney, the sound of his heart returning under her hands. "You are welcome," she says evenly. "I was doing my job. That job saved my life." She nods once. "That is what we do here." Most people would soften then. Most people would smile, linger, ask questions. She does not. She turns back to her chart. Something about that pleases him more than it should. "I did not get your name," he says. "You did not need it," she replies. There is a pause. Not awkward, curious. "You spoke to me," he says, "when I could barely breathe." She finally meets his eyes. "I speak to all my patients." I doubt that he says, a hint of amusement in his voice. She closes the folder and faces him fully now. "Listen carefully. I do not care who you are outside this building. Inside it, you follow the rules like everyone else. You rest, you heal, and you do not distract the staff." Around them, the nurses pretend not to listen. A smile touches his mouth. Slow, genuine. "As you wish," he says. "That should be the end of it." It is not. Over the next week, flowers arrive at the nurse's station. Expensive ones. She sends them back. Coffee appears on her break table with her name written carefully on the cup. She gives it away. A security guard quietly mentions that someone made sure her car was fixed overnight after it stalled in the parking garage. She stiffens at that. She finds him waiting one evening near the elevators. "I did not ask for help," she says immediately. "I know," he replies. "That is why I offered it." "I am engaged," she says, sharper now. "I know that too." She should walk away. Instead, she holds his gaze. "This ends," she says. "Now." He inclines his head slightly. "If that is what you want." She leaves, heart beating faster than it should. That night at dinner, her fiancé barely looks up from his phone as he talks about promotions and better neighborhoods. She listens, nods, and for the first time feels an unfamiliar emptiness settle in her chest. Across the city, the billionaire gangster sits alone, staring at a hospital bracelet he has kept for no reason he can explain. For both of them, something has already begun to shift. Part 3 begins quietly, the way pressure builds before something breaks. The nurse keeps her distance. That is her solution to everything that feels complicated. She adjusts schedules, switches hallways, volunteers for extra rounds on other floors. She tells herself that avoidance is professionalism, that if she does not give something space, it cannot grow. But the hospital is not a place where powerful men simply disappear. He is discharged under conditions that feel more like negotiations than medical advice. Private doctors, private drivers, private security. On his last day, he waits near the exit, standing on his own feet, now suit, immaculate presence unchanged. She passes him with a curt nod, intent on leaving without conversation. "Thank you," he says, again softer this time. She stops despite herself. "You already said that," she replies. "I meant it differently," he says. "I meant it without witnesses." She exhales, tired. "Then accept it, and let me go." "I am trying," he answers, and for the first time she hears something unfamiliar in his voice. Not command. Not threat. effort. After that, he does not appear at the hospital anymore. Instead, the world around her changes in smaller ways. Subtle ways, the kind that are easy to miss if you do not want to notice them. A drunk man shouting at the clinic where she volunteers is escorted out before she even reaches the door. The broken streetlight near her apartment is fixed overnight. When her engagement ring slips from her finger at work and disappears, it is returned to the nurse's station the next morning, cleaned and placed carefully in a small envelope. No note. No name. She knows anyway. She confronts him a week later, not at the hospital but on the sidewalk outside her building. He is leaning against a black car coat open, as if he belongs there, as if he belongs anywhere he chooses. This is crossing a line, she says, the moment she sees him. He straightens. I have not touched you. You are touching my life, she snaps. I am protecting it. I did not ask you to. I know. That answer stops her. She steps closer, lowering her voice. You do not get to decide what I need. His gaze does not waver. I am not deciding. I am responding. To what? To the fact that you walk through the world assuming no one will stand behind you, he says. That is not how I live. She laughs once, sharp and humorless. Of course it is not. You buy solutions. You do not earn them. For a brief moment, something dark flickers across his face. Then it is gone. You earned mine, he says simply. She has no response to that. She turns and walks away before he can say more. That night, she sits across from her fiancé at their kitchen table, invitations spread out between them. He talks about venues and guest lists, about how certain people should be impressed. She listens, twisting her ring around her finger, feeling its weight differently now. What do you want? He asks distractedly. She opens her mouth, then closes it again. She does not know how to answer. Days pass, then weeks. Her fiancé grows impatient with her long hours and quiet moods. He jokes about her being married to the hospital already. He does not notice how often she flinches when he checks his phone during conversations. He does not ask why she looks exhausted in a way sleep cannot fix. Meanwhile, the billionaire gangster watches from a distance he has never practiced before. He does not push. He does not intrude. He waits. It is the hardest thing he has ever done. When he sees her again, it is by accident. Or something close to it. She is standing in line at a small coffee shop, still in scrubs, hair loose from a long shift. Her fiancé is beside her, annoyed at the wait already scrolling. The man behind them makes a careless comment about nurses being replaceable. Laughs at his own joke. She stiffens. Before she can speak, a familiar voice cuts in. She is not replaceable, he says calmly, and you should apologize. The man turns startled, recognizes him, and pales. The apology comes quickly. Too quickly. She turns slowly. Do not, she warns. I know, he replies. I am leaving. He does. Immediately. Her fiancé stares after him, confused, impressed, unsettled. Who was that? She looks down at her coffee cup, heart pounding. No one. But she knows it is not true. Something has been planted now. Not fear. Not obligation. Expectation. And it is only beginning. Part 4 unfolds in the space between resistance and curiosity. The nurse tells herself that nothing has changed. She still wakes before dawn. She still works double shifts when the ward is short-staffed. She still wears the same shoes, rides the same bus, and keeps her head down. If she repeats it often enough, maybe it will be true. But the world keeps answering her differently now. She notices it first at work. A patient who had been waiting weeks for approval is suddenly transferred without delay. Supplies that were always rationed arrive in full, unmarked boxes. No one explains why, no one takes credit. The hospital simply functions more smoothly around her. She does not ask questions. She does not want the answers to. Outside of work, the changes are quieter. The street near her apartment feels safer at night. The man who used to linger by the corner convenience store disappears. Her bus is late one evening, and a car slows beside her at the curb. It is him. He does not get out. He does not insist. I am not here to give you a ride, he says through the open window. I am here to tell you it is raining harder than it looks. Take the bus. I will follow until you get home. I did not ask you to, she replies, arms crossed. I know. She boards the bus anyway. When she looks back through the fogged glass, the car is there far enough not to crowd her, close enough not to disappear. It unsettles her more than any demand would have. Their next encounter is almost normal. She is sitting alone at a small diner near the hospital, nursing a cup of coffee between shifts. He takes the seat across from her without asking, sets his hands flat on the table, and waits. "You are persistent," she says. "I am patient," he answers. "There is a difference. You are used to getting what you want. I am used to people pretending they have no choice," he says. "You do." She studies him then, the way he holds still as if forcing himself not to lean in, the way his eyes track her reactions instead of the room. For someone who commands entire rooms without speaking, he is strangely careful with her. "You do not scare me," she says. "I know," he replies, and smiles faintly. "That is why I am here." He does not touch her. He does not lower his voice to intimidate. He orders food he does not eat, listens more than he talks, and leaves when she stands. Before he goes, he says almost casually, "Your engagement dinner is next Friday." She freezes. "You should not know that." "I should not," he agrees. "But I do." She waits for the threat that never comes. "Congratulations," he adds instead. Then he walks away. At home that night, she stares at the ceiling long after sleep should have claimed her. Her fiancé is beside her, already snoring, already distant even in rest. She thinks of the way he talks about the future like a checklist. The way he never asks what she needs, only what she can fit into his plans. In contrast, she remembers a man who follows her bus in silence, just to make sure she arrives safely. It frightens her how much that difference matters. Over the next few days, he becomes a presence without being an interruption. He appears, speaks plainly, and leaves before she can accuse him of crossing a line. Once, when she slips on wet pavement outside the hospital, he catches her elbow instinctively, then immediately lets go. "Sorry," he says, as if touching her had been a mistake. She laughs despite herself. It surprises them both. "You are not very good at this," she says. "At what?" "At pretending you are not dangerous." His eyes soften. "I am not pretending." The engagement dinner approaches like a storm cloud. Her fiancé grows increasingly impatient, obsessed with appearances, with who will attend, with how things will look. He corrects the way she holds her fork. He comments on her dress choices. He talks about introductions and advantages. She listens, nods, and feels herself shrinking in a way she never does at work. The night before the dinner, she runs into the billionaire gangster one last time before everything is supposed to be settled. They stand under the awning of her building, rain dripping steadily around them. "After tomorrow," she says, "this ends." He nods once. "I know. You are not invited." "I would not come," he says. "Unless you needed me." She meets his eyes. "I will not." "I hope you do not," he answers quietly. For the first time, there is something like regret in his voice. She goes upstairs, heart unsteady, unaware that the next night will tear everything open. Because while he has promised not to interfere, fate has never respected agreements. And neither has love. Part 5 arrives, dressed in white and gold, polished enough to hide the fracture lines beneath it. The engagement dinner is held at an upscale restaurant downtown, the kind with soft lighting and chairs that cost more than her monthly rent. Crystal glasses line the tables. Names she does not recognize fill the room. People she has never met smile at her as if they already know the version of her they expect to see. She stands beside her fiancé, near the entrance, her hand resting lightly on his arm. Her dress is elegant but simple. No diamonds. No statement pieces. Just herself. She feels out of place, in a way she cannot quite explain. He, on the other hand, looks perfectly comfortable. He moves through the room, greeting investors, colleagues, and friends of friends, introducing her with pride that feels rehearsed. He talks about her job with a tone that sounds supportive, but lands differently in her ears now. She is a nurse, he says, more than once. Very dedicated, very hardworking. Very small, the unspoken part seems to add. She smiles, she nods, she endures. Dinner begins smoothly enough, speeches are made, toasts are raised, compliments flow easily, especially when they are aimed at him. She notices how often his hand leaves hers to check his phone. How his attention drifts whenever someone more important enters the room. Halfway through the meal, she excuses herself to the restroom, needing air. She stands at the sink, staring at her reflection, practicing calm. This is what she chose, she reminds herself. This is stability. This is the future everyone told her to want. When she returns, the energy in the room has shifted. Her fiancé is standing now, glass in hand, smiling broadly. The table quiets as people turn to listen. I would like to say a few words, he announces. Tonight is about honesty and new beginnings. Her stomach tightens. I have been given an opportunity, he continues, one that will change my life. Our life. But with opportunity comes clarity. He looks at her, then truly looks at her, and something in his eyes is different, calculating, detached. I have realized that love is not enough, he says lightly. Ambition matters. Alignment matters. And sometimes you outgrow the person you thought you would build a future with. A murmur ripples through the room. She feels every eye turn toward her. I believe it is better to be honest now, he adds, than to pretend later. The words land like a slap. She cannot breathe. She cannot move. I am ending this engagement, he says. Tonight, silence crashes down heavy and unforgiving. Someone whispers. Someone else shifts uncomfortably. A woman near the head of the table avoids her gaze entirely. She stands slowly, chair scraping softly against the floor. Her hands shake, but her voice does not. You planned this, she says. He shrugs, almost apologetic. I did not plan to humiliate you. But I cannot deny reality. I need a partner who fits the world I am entering. That is when she understands. This was never about love. It was about access. She nods once, removing her ring and placing it carefully on the table. The clink is louder than it should be. I hope it is worth it, she says. She turns to leave. The doors at the far end of the restaurant open. Conversation dies mid-breath. He steps inside without hesitation, dressed in dark, tailored perfection, presence commanding without effort. The billionaire gangster. Every head turns. Recognition spreads instantly like electricity through the room. He walks straight toward her. Not her former fiancé. Her. She freezes, caught between shock and instinct. He stops beside her, close enough that she can feel the warmth of him, but he does not touch her. She is not available, he says calmly. The room holds its breath. She will not be discarded, he continues, eyes locked on the man who just humiliated her. And she will not be spoken to like she is replaceable. Her ex stammers, color draining from his face. I did not realize she was with you. She is the gangster, says. Then deliberately he turns to her. And I am the one who will be engaged to her. Gasps ripple outward. Phones are lowered. Whispers erupt. She looks at him, stunned. What are you doing? He meets her gaze, steady and unapologetic. Standing where I should have been the moment someone tried to make you small. He offers his arm, not possessive, not demanding. An invitation. The room watches. Waiting. Her heart pounds. This was not the plan. This was never the plan. But neither was being left in pieces at a table full of strangers. She takes his arm. Together they walk out as the doors close behind them, sealing the night in their wake. Outside, the city hums indifferent and alive. She pulls her arm free the moment they reach the sidewalk. That was unacceptable, she says. I know, he replies. Then why did you do it? He looks at her, rain beginning to fall again. Because no one else did. And in that moment, with her world still spinning, she realizes there is no turning back now. Part 6 begins after the doors close and the noise of the restaurant is left behind. The rain has returned, light but persistent, dotting the sidewalk and soaking into the hem of her dress. She stands under the awning, arms crossed tightly over her chest, trying to slow her breathing. The city feels suddenly too loud, too bright, too aware of her. That was unacceptable, she says again, sharper now. You had no right. I know, he replies without argument. That only angers her more. You embarrassed him, she says. You embarrassed me. He studies her face, not defensive, not smug. I stopped something that should never have happened. That was my choice to make, she snaps. Not yours. He nods once. You are right. The admission throws her off balance. She was ready for a fight, ready to defend herself. Instead, she is left holding anger with nowhere to put it. Then why did you say that, she demands? Why did you say you were the one engaged to me? He exhales slowly, as if choosing each word with care. Because in that moment you needed certainty, not silence. She laughs bitterly. Do not pretend this was noble. I am not pretending, he says. I am being honest. He gestures toward the street where his car waits at a respectful distance. Let me take you somewhere dry. You can yell at me the entire way if you want. She hesitates. Every instinct tells her not to get into that car. And yet the night has already gone so far off script that the rules feel meaningless. 5 minutes, she says. Then I am done with you. Agreed, he replies. The car is warm and quiet. The door closes with a soft final sound that makes her chest tighten. He does not touch her. He does not look at her right away. He simply tells the driver where to go. They stop at a private terrace overlooking the river, empty at this hour, lights reflecting across the dark water. He steps out first, holds the door open, and waits. She joins him reluctantly. I am not your solution, she says the moment they are alone. I am not asking you to be, he answers. Then what are you asking? He turns to face her fully now. The city hums below them, distant and unaware. I am asking you to listen, he says. Just once. She folds her arms again but does not interrupt. I have wanted you since the night you saved my life, he continues. Not because you were kind, not because you were brave, but because you did not care who I was. She looks away. You treated me like a human being, he says. No one does that. Not in my world. That does not give you the right to claim me, she says quietly. I am not claiming you, he says. I am choosing you. She turns back sharply. Those are not the same thing. No, he agrees. Which is why I am not asking for love. He reaches into his coat and pulls out a slim folder. He places it on the table between them without opening it. This is a contract, he says. A marriage contract. Her breath catches. Absolutely not. Let me finish, he says calmly. She does not touch the folder. A marriage in name only, he continues. Temporary. Clear terms. No control over your work. No control over your body. No expectations beyond public appearances when necessary. She shakes her head. You are unbelievable. I am honest, he says. I love you. And I want you beside me. But I know what you lost tonight. I know trust does not come back quickly. She stares at him. So this is your compromise. Yes, he says. You get time, protection from gossip, your dignity back. I get the right to stand next to you without lying about my intentions. And if I say no, she asks. He does not hesitate. Then I walk away. That stops her. You would not, she says. I would, he answers. Because forcing you would make everything I feel worthless. The rain softens, falling slower now. She looks down at the folder, still untouched. How long? 1 year, he says. After that, you leave if you want. No penalties. No threats. And during that year, she asks, I will prove that what I feel is real, he says. Or I will fail. Silence stretches between them. She thinks of the ring on the table. Of the room full of people who watched her worth be negotiated out loud. Of a man who spoke of ambition while letting her stand alone. Finally, she reaches for the folder. I am not promising you anything, she says. I am not asking you to, he replies. She exhales, slow and steady. Fine, she says. 1 year. In name only. He nods, relief carefully restrained. As they stand there, contract between them, she does not realize she has just stepped into the most dangerous agreement of her life. Not because of the paper, but because, for the first time, she is considering what it might mean to stay. Part 7 settles into a rhythm that feels unreal precisely because it works. The contract is signed quietly. No cameras. No witnesses beyond a lawyer who does not ask questions. By the end of the week, the headlines appear anyway. Photos, surface of them, leaving a building together, her expression unreadable, his presence unmistakable. Words like unexpected, shocking, strategic flood the screen. She does not read them. She moves into his residence, with 2 suitcases and a spine held straight. The space is enormous, all glass and dark wood overlooking the city like it belongs to him alone. A housekeeper offers to unpack. She refuses. This is still her life. She will place her own clothes in the drawers. He gives her a tour and stops at the guest wing. This is yours, he says. She looks at him sharply. We are married. In name, he replies. And you asked for boundaries. She studies his face, searching for a challenge that is not there. "Thank you," she says finally. The days fall into patterns. She leaves early for work. He never interferes. A driver waits, but only if she agrees. Sometimes, she takes the bus instead just to remind herself that she can. At home they coexist carefully, share dinners without expectation, conversations that hover safely above the surface. He asks about her patients. She asks about his meetings. Neither pushes. At night they retreat to separate rooms. It should feel cold. It does not. The first crack appears on an ordinary evening. She comes home late, exhausted shoulders, sagging hands smelling faintly of antiseptic. He is in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up clearly out of place as he stares at a cutting board like it might betray him. "What are you doing?" she asks. "Cooking," he says. "I watched a video." She blinks. "You have a staff." "They have the night off," he replies. "Sit." She hesitates, then does. The food is edible. Barely. She smiles despite herself. "This is terrible," she says. "I know," he answers calmly. "Eat anyway." She laughs, the sound surprising them both. Later that night, she finds a blanket folded neatly outside her door. No note. No explanation. Just quiet consideration. Another crack. Weeks pass. Appearances are made. Dinners attended. She learns how to stand beside him without shrinking. He learns how to speak without dominating. When someone makes a careless comment about her background, he does not correct them. He waits. She corrects them herself. He watches with something like pride. One night, after a particularly long shift, she comes home shaking with suppressed anger. A patient had died. Young. Preventable. The kind that stays with you. She sits on the edge of the couch, staring at nothing. He sits across from her, not too close. "Do you want to talk?" he asks. "No," she says. He nods. "Then, I will stay anyway." They sit in silence for a long time. He does not offer solutions. He does not distract her. He simply remains. When she finally speaks, her voice is quiet. "You could have saved him." He stiffens. "I would have." "That is the problem," she says. "I cannot." Not always. For the first time, he does not look powerful. He looks helpless. "I do not know how to fix that," he admits. "You are not supposed to," she replies. Something shifts between them then. Not romance. Recognition. Later, as she passes his study, she overhears him on the phone. "No," he says sharply. "She is not a liability. And if you ever speak about her like that again, we are done." The line goes dead. He notices her standing there. Their eyes meet. "I did not ask you to do that," she says. "I know," he replies. That answer feels different now. The third crack comes unexpectedly. She finds the contract on his desk, one evening, open pages marked with careful notes. One clause is crossed out entirely. Another is softened language rewritten to favor her. "You changed this," she says. "Yes," he answers without hesitation. "Why?" "Because I realized I was still protecting myself," he says. "Not you." She closes the folder slowly. "You know this was supposed to be fake," she says. "I know," he replies. But pretending stops being harmless when it starts hurting. She does not sleep that night, neither does he. By morning, the distance between them has narrowed to something dangerous. Not desire. Not yet. Trust. And that is far more difficult to control. Part 8 begins the moment the truth can no longer stay quiet. It arrives without warning, disguised as routine. She is finishing a late shift when her supervisor calls her into the office. The tone is polite, careful, too careful. "There was a concern raised," the woman says, folding her hands. "About your recent visibility." The word lands wrong. "Visibility," the nurse repeats. "There are questions," the supervisor continues, "about whether your marriage has influenced certain hospital decisions, donations, supply access, staffing approvals." The nurse feels the room tilt slightly. "You think I asked for those things," she says flatly. "No," the supervisor replies quickly, "but others do." That night, she does not go home right away. She walks. Past blocks she knows by heart. Past lights and noise and strangers who do not recognize her as anyone's wife. By the time she reaches the river, her hands are shaking. She calls him. "Did you interfere?" she asks the moment he answers. There is a pause. Not long. Honest. I protected you, he says. That is not what I asked. Another pause. Longer this time. I removed obstacles, he admits. Things that should never have been in your way to begin with. Her chest tightens. You used your power. Yes. Without telling me. Yes. The word hits harder than any denial could have. She turns away from the water, voice unsteady now. You promised this would not happen. I promised I would not control you, he says. I did not. You decided for me, she snaps. That is control. Silence stretches between them, thick and painful. Come home, he says finally. Let us talk face to face. She laughs, once bitter. You do not get to call it home. When she arrives, the penthouse feels different. Too polished. Too quiet. Like a stage reset after the audience has left. He is waiting in the living room, jacket, discarded tension, visible in the way he stands. I never wanted this to hurt you, he says immediately. That does not matter, she replies. You still did it. I saw people circling you, he says. Gossip, suspicion, envy. I eliminated the risk. I am not a risk, she says. I am a person. I know he insists. That is why I acted. That is exactly why you should not have, she fires back. She steps past him, grabs the folder from the drawer where it has always been kept. The contract. Their careful compromise. You said this was about choice, she says, flipping it open. You said I could leave whenever I wanted. You can, he says quietly. She looks at him, then really looks at him. The man who learned to cook badly just to make her laugh. The man who sat in silence when she broke. The man who rewrote a contract to give her more freedom. And yet she says, you still decided the world for me. He does not deny it. I have lived my entire life anticipating danger, he says. I do not know how to stop. That is not my burden to carry, she replies. She sets the contract on the table. I cannot stay, if this is the cost, she says. I will not have my integrity questioned because of you. His jaw tightens. If you walk away, the world will tear you apart. She meets his gaze without fear. Then let it try. He steps closer, then stops himself. I love you, he says. Not in theory. Not on paper. In practice. Her voice breaks despite herself. Then you should have trusted me. The words hang between them, final and devastating. She turns, takes her coat, and walks toward the door. He does not stop her. At the threshold, she pauses. Not because she expects him to beg, but because part of her wants him to. He says nothing. The door closes behind her. Alone in the apartment, he stands perfectly still, surrounded by the evidence of a life he almost had. For the first time, power feels useless. And for the first time, she walks away not from a contract, but from a man she is no longer sure she can forgive. Because love without respect is just another form of control. And this time, the choice has been hers. Part 9 begins where power finally ends. The city does not stop moving because she left. The hospital does not pause. The headlines do not retract themselves. But something quieter happens in the days that follow, something no one reports on. He lets go. No calls. No protection. No invisible hands smoothing her path. When questions arise at the hospital, he answers them once, publicly, without her present. He releases records of every donation, every approval, every supply order. He makes it clear that nothing was requested in her name, nothing was conditioned on her presence in his life. Then he steps back. The board quiets. The gossip loses oxygen. The questions fade. She hears about it a week later, not from him, but from her supervisor. He did the right thing, the woman says carefully, and he made it very clear that you had nothing to do with it. She nods, unsure what to feel. At home, her apartment feels smaller than she remembers. The walls are thin. The nights are loud. She sleeps badly. She dreams of silence filled with another presence, not demanding, just there. She tells herself that missing someone does not mean forgiving them. Meanwhile, he dismantles the only thing he still has that connects them. The contract is shredded, clause by clause, dropped into a fireplace that has never been used. The paper curls and blackens, the last symbol of control turning to ash. Weeks pass. They do not speak. Until one evening she finishes a late shift and finds him standing outside the hospital across the street, hands in his pockets, posture unguarded. No car waiting, no security in sight. She stops. He does not approach. "I am not here to ask you back," he says when she finally crosses the street. "I am here to tell you goodbye. Properly." Her breath catches. "You could have done that without showing up." "I needed to say it where we began," he replies. "Where you saved me without knowing who I was." He takes a step closer, then stops, respecting the space she has claimed. "I was wrong," he continues. "Not because I loved you, but because I believed loving you meant anticipating your needs instead of trusting your strength." She says nothing. "I have spent my life controlling outcomes," he says. "I thought letting go would make me weaker. It turns out it was the only honest thing left to do." He reaches into his coat and removes a small object. Not a ring, a folded piece of paper. "This is the last copy of the contract," he says. "Unsigned, unenforceable. It ends here." He places it on the bench between them. "I will not follow you again," he says. "I will not protect you without your consent. I will not speak for you. If you choose to walk away, this is where I stop." She looks at the paper, then at him. "And if I choose something else," she asks quietly. His voice does not change. "Then I will ask, not demand." Silence settles between them, heavy with everything they never said. She picks up the paper, tears it in half. Then again, the pieces flutter to the ground. She exhales, steady and sure. "Ask me," she says. He does not kneel. He does not perform. He meets her eyes like an equal. "What is your name?" he asks softly. "My real wife." The word lands differently now. No contract beneath it, no audience around it, just choice. She smiles through tears. She does not bother to hide. And for the first time since the night she saved his life, she answers without fear. As they stand there, the hospital lights glowing behind them, the future does not feel certain, but it feels honest. And that is enough, because love in the end was never about power. It was about letting go.